Hello and welcome back to Darkstorm Rising. Well, last night we played a game of Death May Die, which is now going to take me a little bit off track because today was meant to be a Warhammer 40k video. But having played our first scenario, it took us 2 attempts to complete. The first scenario we played against Cthulhu and got absolutely slaughtered. And then the second game we played against Hastur and we won. We were victorious and cast aside the minions of Hastur. Really good game, really enjoyed it. But what I've realised is that in the second scenario, you've got to have completed the Cthonian, which is the last miniature I haven't painted in the box set. So we're going to go on to the Cthonian today, paint him. He's got quite a lot of intricacies about him. And I think he's quite an intimidating model. So what we'll do is break him down in probably about 3 key areas to try and simplify the model as you're painting so that it doesn't look or isn't quite as intimidating as you're working your way around the model. So, to the table! So here is the mighty beast that is the Cthonian. Looking at his stature in the game, it looks like he's going to be a nightmare to deal with. But enough of that. What we're going to do first with this chap, first of all, is get my brush so it's actually pliable enough to work with. And then we'll mix, this is a little bit of brown rose and bone white, both by Vallejo. I'm going to get sort of a, it's not quite as dark as I really want it. I think we're going to add so I've gone and I've got some Gorgon brown. It's a nice rich warm chestnutty brown, and what I'm looking for is like a warm undertone for the bone. That I'm going to try and get like a bone drenched in blood type of look going with this miniature. So just work the bone in all the way around the model. This will take some time. I apologise up front. I will probably put a wash over this at a later point, and we'll see as we go. But this gives us a really nice base bone tone to work from. So I'll work my way around the model, and then we'll see how it looks. So after a first pass, the coverage is pretty good. There is some black showing through, but what we will do is we'll do another quick wet coat over the top, catch the high areas, and we'll just freshen up the colour, give it a bit more depth, a bit more saturation, and I think at that we should have a pretty good base coat for the initial bone. So I'm pretty happy with that. So having now got some decent coverage on the bone, we're now going to allow that time to settle. And what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the bodywork. And this I want in more of a bloody red colour. So we're going to start with Vallejo's burnt red, and try and get everything underneath the bone and in those internal parts painted. So I'll just work my way around here. Now, if you leave some of the underlying black here and there, we're going to go for a fairly strong coverage, but the odd little bit of black showing through is just going to help with the shadow. So in the recesses and the extremely hard to get places, because this model is so interwoven, I'm going to be aiming to get the burnt red on most of the coverage, but there will be the odd shadow automatically given for free. So I'll work my way around. I'm going to work all the way down to the base of the model, just above the tentacles, where there are some spines there, and then I will come back once I've had a chance to do that. Right, so that's the basal tone of the reds, ready for slowly developing the colours. In the meantime, I've prepared a wash. This is 2 of Liquitex's acrylic inks. In there we have magenta and we have burnt umber. The magenta is around about 85% of the mix, and then 3 or 4 drops, maybe 5 drops of the burnt umber, and then on top of that I've put in about 3 brushfuls of Volupus Purple by Citadel. Right, so what we'll do is we'll start to apply this into the bone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it and then remove some of the upper surfaces, but it's going to be towards the end it's going to be like I'm doing now, reasonably strong coverage, although what I may do is just pull a little bit of the paint off, get a wet brush and pull some of the paint off a little, but I'll work round and we'll get all of this bonework covered in this mixture, and then we'll see how that dries over the next few minutes. So far I've been working with quite a large brush, a size 3, but now what we'll do, we're going to start doing a little bit more detail work. So I'm going to drop down to a 00. I'm going to start to first of all work on the innermost aspects on this burnt red. I'm going to add in a little bit of scarlet blood, and then we'll probably mix a bit of the two together and just get an intermediate tone first. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work on these middle bits here, start pushing some highlights, then we'll go out onto the bone once that's had a chance to dry, and we'll look at dry brushing over the bonework and bringing up a much more bony colour. But I want that blood saturation to be in amongst the bones. I want it already. It's like this creature's been around for hundreds of years and it's had millions of victims. So I want evidence of that on there. In the meantime, what we'll do is we'll get some of the burnt red and we'll mix some scarlet blood in with it. And that's going to be our first layer of starting to increase some intensity, some depth in those flesh tones that I'm aiming for towards the end. So we'll just go around and touch the upper portions, and we'll just slowly work our way around here. Just adding some highlights in, being careful about placement, just making sure it's on the more upper surface areas, making sure that the recesses are left dark and give us some automatic depth to our shading. And we'll just keep working around the model. And on the inner parts here, I'm just going to try and draw lines with it being much more in shade, that you're not going to need as much intensity here. So really just touching the upper surface areas. I will work all the way down to the base here, and I'll work my way around the model, and I'll come back once I've had a chance to do so and show you the end result. So the next part is to go to the Bloody Scarlet on its own and then just re-pick out all those highlights again. This time just catching just a little bit less of the model. And work our way around once more, catching all of these panels under here as well. Yeah, catch on. And then we'll come back once we've added another layer of red. Right, so we're going to go back to the bone now. The the paint on here is virtually dry. It's not quite there, but we're going to go back to the original colour on the palette, which is still over here and is not completely dry. And we're going to do some dry brushing over the upper surfaces, just bringing it back up to more of a bony colour and just catching those higher upper surfaces. But what we're going to do is, if you look on the inside where we've been painting red, there are some bony prominences in there. So what we're also going to do is we're going to catch those and unify them with the spine, and also a little bit of flesh tone on that upper surface. It just gives the model a bit more cohesion. Brightening him back up a little bit again. We don't need to go too far underneath here, because that will give us a bit of natural shade. Alright, I'll just finish off, tidy up a bit, and then we'll come back for the next bit. So for the next step, we are actually going to bone white, and we need to really... So I've not taken any of the old paint off from the last dry brush session, and then I'm pushing bone white into the brush, so it's going to be virtually bone white, but with a little bit of transition of colour in there. And again, I'm going to work my way around, pushing the bone work, but leaving that evidence of gore in those recesses. And I'll come back once we've worked our way around all the bony structures. So we're starting to get a real feel for that bony prominences coming through now. Oh, one thing I forgot. Before we go to ivory, let's get back some of the old colour. And don't forget, like I just have done, the spiny processes in here, just to give those another catch. As we came through with the bone. And then we're going to swap to ivory. And obviously really do, now we've swapped a much brighter colour, really do make sure that you have taken a lot of the paint off, because this will really mess the model up if we put too much on. So we're just going to go over the upper prominences gently this time, not quite as aggressive with the brush. Sorry. And as before, don't forget the little spiny processes like I did last time. But I think that is more or less where we need it. And now what we can do is we can drop onto the rest of the bodywork and just make sure that we don't miss anywhere that's meant to be bony. Okay. And I've deliberately left, if you look in the recesses, I've deliberately left them a little bit darker. Just making sure I have caught everywhere. Okay. Right, so now we can go back to the body. So now we're going to get a bit more of a pinky flesh tone going. And what we're going to do is we're going to mix basic flesh tone in with the bloody scarlet. And we'll go on a bit of a shade lighter to start with. And this is all going to go on the bodywork, but we're going to be looking at essentially picking out highlights. Now what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to work this pale colour too far up the torso. I'm just going to give little bits of hints the further up we go. And just keep little essences of light in there. But what I'm going to do is once we come out onto the main bodywork is hit it harder and give us some decent highlights to work with. And we're going to go even brighter yet. But I shall work my way around and I'll show you what the result I'm looking for is. So having now gone into the bodywork with like the pinky mixture of the flesh tone and the scarlet blood, we now grab the flesh tone on its own. And then we're just going to push the highlights a little bit further. But this time, quite a lot less coverage. And just catching those upper surfaces and just pushing and exaggerating the textures that are there. Just sketching them in, and we'll work our way around the model, just carrying on with that same feeling. So as you get like a drop off under an edge, I'm ignoring that area and just creating that extra bit of shadow in there. And as we come up, it's going to be a lot less highlights going on. So I'll work my way around all the rest of this and come back. Alright, now just to make the body work a little bit more flesh toned, I'm just putting some volupus pink on the palette, but I've added quite a lot of water to it to thin it down, because this is quite a potent colour. I don't want it to ruin the effect we've got. Now up in the top here we can be fairly bold with it, but we're trying to aim for more the recesses. And just give it a little bit of a pink push. And just to deepen off some of these recessed colours just a little bit. And then as we come down towards the bottom, it is literally pushing it into all the shadow areas and not being quite as bold with it. And then just literally working my way around the model with it, and just giving it that unified sort of depth of shadow on the flesh tones. So next we're going to move on to the tentacles, and my love for muted purple has not faded, so we're going to use Liquitex's muted violet, and that's going to go on all these tentacles, not going on the claws. But it's also going to go on the tentacles at the feet. There are some claws here we need to paint later, but we'll just concentrate on the tentacles for now. And we'll just give them a liberal coat, and I'll come back once I've been around those. So the next step is to now grab some volupus pink, and while the muted purple has had a chance to have a little bit of a dry, we run the volupus pink over the upper surfaces where light's going to catch, where we're going to add some highlights in a little while. And again, we'll work our way around and then on to the next step. So we're going to put some highlights in. We're going to go back to the basic flesh tone, and we're going to wipe off a lot of the paint that's on the brush, and then with the edge of the brush where there is a highlight, just stroke down. And then where we've got these little ridges here, we'll just paint down each one and reinforce them. And we'll work around all the tentacles, just giving them a little dusting of the basic flesh tone. And again on this one here, bit of a more prominent set of ridges on this one. Okay, so we get that and then leave that to dry, and that does need a good amount of time to dry for the next step. So now we've drawn all the highlights in, we're going to get some thinned down volupus pink and just wash over all the marks we've made. And onto the rest of the tentacle around it, just so that it gives us a little bit of blending of the colours. And then we'll come back and have a look at the finished result of that once it's actually dried, because you're not really going to get the impression of what it looks like until the shine of the wet paint has come off. I'm just going back in with a mixture of the basic flesh tone mixed with a little bit of the volupus pink to create a sort of a very similar highlight colour. And I'm just going in and just doing the odd little bit of touching up and just reinforcing, because it just looks a little bit too muted with the volupus pink over the top. It needs to be there, but it just needs that little bit of extra pop back in at the end. And it doesn't take much, just a few little dabs on those areas that you've already highlighted, and it just brings them back through. So I'll just add those, and then we are looking like we may be towards the home stretch. So for the claws and these talons, and there are a few little protrusion like spines. The first thing we're going to do is hit them all. I'll just do one for an example. So talon, we'll hit them with I think is it grunge brown I've got? Gorgon brown. So that's those. The claws, literally sort of 2/3 of an upper surface area. We'll work around those, and then the little spines that are on the side here. Don't know if you can actually get in there and see those. And I'll do all of the rest and then we shall come back. And then the next step is to get some bone white and mix it in with the brown, and then we're just going to highlight the claws on the upper surface areas. And then all the talons as well, we're going to just stroke down the talons and give them a coat of this mixture. And then the little spines that are virtually impossible to get to. The ones on this side aren't too bad. Where are they? Well, when I said they weren't too bad, I was telling a lie. And then we're going to go in with the bone wide. And then give the ends of the claws a highlight and make them look like claws. And we'll also touch up the these little clampy claw things. And touch up the edge of the little spines on the side as well when I can find them. There's one. And then there are some around this side as well. And then we'll finish off the rest of the claws and bits and bobs, and then I shall come back. Right, okay, now for the tongue mouth parts. First, whoa, steady. Stay. Right, now for the mouth parts, we're going to go in with Screamer Pink, Citadel colour, and that's literally going in there and just slapping the colour all over the three secondary mouth parts and the primary mouth part. So that's the mouth parts all painted, base coated. So we're now going to swap over to some Emperor's Children, and what I'll do is I'll do one tongue and then I'll work around the rest. So we add in the Emperor's Children down the side of the tongue. Trying to catch these up surface areas. Where it dips backwards, we're going to leave that, and where it comes forwards again, we'll catch the tongue. Trying to give it a bit of a more three-dimensional shape. On the other side here where it twists, just follow the line through a little bit, then on the back, and then just make sure this side has the continuity from the back. And then we'll go over to some Fulgrim Pink. Hold that on what little space I have left. And then we're going to reinforce those highlights even further. And back of the tongue. Let's go get some more fulcrum. And then from the other perspective, and then we'll grab a little bit of the ivory and just mix that in, and we'll go for an even sharper highlight. Just catch that. Where you get the top of any light coming in. So hopefully that's looking, just let it focus. Hopefully that's not looking too bad. I'm going to do exactly the same effect on every single tongue. So I'll be back in a little while. So that's all the tongues highlighted. I have just blobbed on some white onto the spines, which we're going to sort out in a second. And then while I have the ivory in my hands, I am just giving the spines elsewhere on the body just a touch of ivory. We'll also do it to the claws as well. Just to make them just pop a little bit more. And it's just literally on the very edges where the light would catch. And right, okay. So I think now we can start to add a bit of gore. We're looking nearly done. Once the base is made pale, that will really make the figure pop. And so let's get some gore on here. And I have some True Blood by Green Stuff World ready. So I shall pop my brush in. And then what we'll do is we will just stipple. So I've take a bit of the blood off on a damp rag that I've got to the side here, so it's not going on too blotchy. And the object isn't to cover all of the figure. Obviously the centre of the mouth is going to get a lot of blood and around there, but the idea is to be able to see evidence of blood, but with some of the detail still coming through, just to, otherwise you just drench the figure in blood and lose all that work that you've just done. I do want to actually work some of the blood onto the spines and stuff up here, not too heavily. I do want this figure to have quite a lot of blood soaking, as though he's just really been like literally rolling in corpses. And where these have like punched through bodies, they would have lots of gore on them. Okay. And then just the odd splatter here and there. I think that may be me happy with the gob. Now we need to get the floor done and then apply some gore across the floor, and then this figure is looking pretty done. So for the floor, I've got some brown sand. I'm going to add a little bit of black. So here's the brown sand. Just putting a little bit of black in there for the first layer of paint. And then that can go on the level. Now I have used a Green Stuff World texture roller here for that, so I've got to fill in the gaps initially. So that's the base covered in brown sand. I'll go make a quick cuppa while that dries off and I'll be back. Right, okay, so on to the next step with the basing. So that was darkened brown sand. We will get some brown sand, and actually rather than waste paint, I'll get some of the bone white and mix that in with the brown sand, and then wipe a lot of that off, and then just gently dry brush over the 3D floor. Yeah, we'll get some dark sand, which is actually surprisingly bright, if I'm honest. So we'll dry brush some of that on as well. Just bring the tones up slowly. Okay. And then we're going to go to some pale sand, which really is pale. And if you notice, I'm starting to come a little bit further away from the model each time I'm getting a tone lighter. Okay, so that's that. Now we've just got to leave that to dry a bit before I apply the blood, otherwise it just goes pink and sinks into the sand. So let's just give that some moments to dry, and then I'll come back and we will finish the model. Okay, now for some serious blood splatterage on the floor. So the Cthonian himself is going to actually be pretty drenched in blood, so let's just sit a load of blood around him and then let it ooze away from him a little bit. There's been maybe violence here, so let's have like a little splatter and then extend it to make it look like something's like splashed across the ground as it's been eviscerated. carry on the blood around the Chthonian. And I think we might just have another lump of something has bounced nearby again in a second. So I think here another little splash mark over there. Okay, I think before we overdo it, that is plenty of blood on the base. One thing left to do is for the base to go black, and now for the grand reveal! Well, that's the Chthonian finish, and I think he looks fab in all his gory glory. So I hope you have enjoyed the video. That's the first box set completed. It's taken me 74 days, admittedly, but slightly less than the 3-year estimate that I did have at the beginning. So well done me. Hope you are enjoying the videos. I will be going on. Don't know whether to leap to the end of the box sets now and then work backwards. I'll have to have a little think about that. Very shortly I will get my poor Necron painted for a 40k video. The poor guy is sat on the table. He's been waiting a couple of weeks now. So I will get that video done. Only one thing really left to say. Are we painting minis yet? Hell yeah! And I'll see you in the next one.